Spiritual awakening isn't sudden, it's a process, a slow shedding of everything that no longer serves your growth. It's not dramatic, and it doesn't always happen overnight. The spiritually awake quit things gradually, piece by piece, until the noise of the world can no longer drown the voice within. They don't cut ties out of anger or resentment. They quietly step away from relationships that drain energy, from conversations that cloud clarity, and from environments that stifle their evolution. Approval, praise, and validation, once sought desperately, lose their grip. The awakened no longer need to be seen to know their worth. Old habits, addictions, and distractions that once comforted them start to feel hollow. They replace them with discipline, presence, and purpose. Masks and facades fall away, revealing authenticity even when it scares the world around them. And slowly, ever so slowly, the illusion of control fades. They stop forcing outcomes, stop chasing certainty, and finally begin trusting the flow of life itself. This isn't quitting, it's liberation. Subscribe to join the Guru Clan, a brotherhood of awakened souls mastering truth, clarity, and self-mastery. Comment below. What is one thing you've slowly quit since awakening? Your story might awaken someone still trapped in illusion. 1. They quit toxic relationships, not people. The spiritually awake don't leave relationships out of anger or revenge. They leave them out of clarity. They gradually recognize that not everyone in their life aligns with their energy, their purpose, or their growth, and that holding on to these connections comes at a cost. It starts subtly. A conversation feels heavier than it should. A friend's words sting more often than they uplift. Their presence begins to drain rather than nourish. The awakened sense it in their body, a tightness in the chest, a sinking in the stomach, a subtle misalignment in energy. They've learned to listen to these signals. Leaving someone doesn't mean they stop caring. It doesn't mean they hate the person or diminish the history shared. It means they respect themselves enough to protect their evolution. They understand that energy is sacred, and the vibration of those around them directly affects their frequency. A toxic relationship is a slow leak of life force, an anchor pulling them back into mediocrity. This process is gradual because the awakened value balance. They don't cut abruptly unless necessary. They create space slowly, testing boundaries, disengaging emotionally, and observing how the relationship behaves without their constant energy investment. They watch for repeated patterns of negativity, manipulation, or draining behavior. When the truth is undeniable, they take action, not with anger, but with quiet resolve. Often, the people they step away from don't understand at first. They feel rejected, confused, or hurt. That's because most people measure love by presence rather than respect, attachment rather than alignment. The awakened know that true care doesn't require sacrificing your peace. Walking away can be the most compassionate act for both parties. The spiritually awake understand the paradox. You can deeply love someone, yet no longer allow their energy to inhabit your life. It's not cruelty, it's preservation. Every step of distance is intentional, a boundary erected to maintain clarity, focus, and inner peace. By gradually quitting toxic relationships, the awakened free space for connection that truly resonates. Relationships that uplift, inspire, and honor growth. They don't seek approval, and they don't cling. They simply prioritize alignment over familiarity, truth over comfort, and energy over obligation. This is why spiritually awake people often appear detached. It's not indifference, it's discernment. They've realized that the people who matter will thrive in their presence, not diminish it. And the ones who can't will quietly fall away, leaving a life uncluttered, energetic, and aligned with purpose. The act of quitting is not loss, it is liberation. The spiritually awake leave behind what no longer serves, not because they are heartless, but because they are awake enough to honor their own evolution. 2. They quit seeking external validation. The spiritually awake slowly stop measuring themselves by the applause of others. Approval, praise, recognition, all of it begins to lose its power. At first, it feels strange. Society has trained us to seek validation like air. Without it, we feel unseen, unworthy, incomplete. But awakening reveals a deeper truth. Self-worth cannot be handed to you. It must be cultivated from within. The process is gradual. You begin to notice the subtle tension that comes from seeking approval. Every compliment feels temporary, every praise fleeting. You start to see how much of your energy has been spent molding yourself to fit expectations, smiling when you don't feel like it, saying yes when you wanted to say no, performing for attention rather than presence. The spiritually awake stop doing these things slowly, intentionally. They no longer bend to the judgment of friends, family, or society. They stop shrinking themselves to fit into boxes, molds, or narratives designed for conformity. Every like, every compliment, every validation from others becomes optional, not a necessity. It's not rebellion, it's evolution. You learn that peace, confidence, and alignment are self-generated. You cultivate an inner authority so powerful that the noise of the outside world, envy, praise, criticism, gossip, simply bounces off. The awakened no longer feel the compulsion to justify themselves or their choices. This withdrawal from external validation also changes relationships. Some people are uncomfortable with it. They may try to pull you back, question your choices, or push for conformity. But the awakened understand that clinging to approval is bondage, and freedom requires detachment. True respect, admiration, and love are earned naturally, not begged for or manipulated. Every time they release the need for recognition, they reclaim energy. Every compliment no longer dictates their mood. Every criticism becomes data, not judgment. And slowly, a new sense of self emerges, one rooted in authenticity, presence, and sovereignty. The spiritually awake realize the ultimate validation comes from living in alignment with truth, purpose, and consciousness. They no longer measure success by applause. They measure it by peace. They no longer seek approval from others. They seek approval from themselves, from the soul, from the universe. This shift is quiet but profound. The outer world may notice, but only the awakened understand the freedom it brings. Peace replaces obsession. Confidence replaces insecurity. And life becomes a mirror of internal alignment rather than external approval. When the spiritually awake quit seeking external validation, they don't become arrogant or disconnected. They become whole, and in that wholeness they radiate a quiet power that no applause can imitate, no criticism can shake, and no one can take away. 3. They quit old habits that no longer serve them. The spiritually awake slowly shed the habits that once defined them. Addictions, distractions, and routines that offered temporary comfort begin to feel hollow. What once brought pleasure now feels empty, like drinking water that no longer quenches thirst. They start noticing the subtle ways old patterns drain energy, scatter focus, and pull them away from purpose. This is not sudden or dramatic. It's a gradual transformation, a conscious shedding. The mind may resist at first. Cravings whisper, just one more time, it won't matter. The ego clings to familiarity, fearing discomfort and change. But the awakened learn to observe without attachment, noticing the pull without surrendering to it. Instant gratification, scrolling endlessly, consuming distractions, indulging impulses, is replaced with presence. They start practicing patience, self-discipline, and intentionality. Each moment becomes a choice, to feed the ego or to nurture the soul. Slowly, one habit at a time, they release what no longer serves. The spiritually awake understand that growth demands discomfort. Patterns that once numbed them now feel like chains. Breaking them isn't punishment, it's liberation. They replace mindless routines with conscious rituals. Meditation, reflection, study, creative expression, and disciplined work. Every small victory reinforces autonomy over impulse. Relationships, consumption, and entertainment are also scrutinized. They quit habits that feed distraction, constant social media, endless entertainment, gossip, or anything that diverts attention from presence. Energy is precious, and the spiritually awake protect it fiercely. This process is subtle but profound. Friends and family may notice changes and misunderstand them as judgment or aloofness. In reality, it's evolution. They are no longer the person they once were. Old habits no longer resonate because the awakened now vibrate at a higher frequency. One that demands alignment, integrity, and purpose. Every old habit released is a step toward clarity, freedom, and mastery. Life becomes less about indulgence and more about intention. The spiritually awake don't quit for deprivation. They quit for expansion. Each discarded pattern is replaced by practices that amplify consciousness, focus, and peace. By releasing the old, they make room for the new, for experiences, relationships, and habits that elevate rather than diminish. This slow process of quitting is not regression, but evolution. It's the conscious crafting of a life aligned with higher truth, purpose, and the awakening soul within. The spiritually awake understand this. Old habits make comfort, but they never elevate. And so they choose presence over distraction, discipline over impulse, and intentional living over fleeting comfort, one deliberate step at a time. 4. They quit pretending to be who they're not. The spiritually awake slowly shed the masks that once protected them. For years, they may have performed for approval, adjusted themselves to fit expectations, and played roles designed to please others. But awakening strips these illusions away. It reveals that authenticity, raw, unfiltered truth, is the only path to alignment. This process is gradual. At first, they test boundaries. They speak opinions without fear of judgment, decline invitations that feel misaligned, or quietly step back from people who demand performance. The world may notice a shift, subtle at first, then undeniable. The spiritually awake no longer smile when they feel indifference, nod when they disagree, or conform when it feels wrong. People-pleasing becomes unbearable. Every time they bend to someone else's expectations, a piece of their soul feels compromised. The awakened recognize the cost: mental fatigue, energy drains, anxiety, and an erosion of integrity. Gradually, they stop bending. They stop justifying themselves. They stop performing for applause. Authenticity replaces performance. Societal roles, the perfect employee, the ideal partner, the acceptable friend, begin to feel restrictive. They notice the dissonance between who they are and who they were expected to be. They quietly shed these roles, one by one, reclaiming autonomy and inner freedom. Even if it alienates some, it aligns them with those who resonate with truth. The spiritually awake also confront the fear of judgment. They may face criticism, rejection, or misunderstanding, but they understand that the temporary discomfort of authenticity outweighs the long-term suffocation of pretense. Living as someone else was never freedom. It was subtle imprisonment. This slow quitting teaches liberation. With every mask removed, life becomes simpler, lighter, and more aligned with purpose. Their energy strengthens, clarity expands, and relationships shift toward those who value truth over convenience. The awakened no longer trade authenticity for acceptance. They embrace reality as it is, honest, unfiltered, and unapologetically true. They quit performing. They quit bending. They quit pretending. And in doing so, they rise into a life where presence, integrity, and soul alignment replace the exhausting choreography of pretense. 5. They quit chasing the illusion of control. The spiritually awake gradually release the need to manipulate life, people, and outcomes. For years, the ego drives them to control everything: plans, reactions, relationships, circumstances, all in a desperate attempt to feel safe and secure. But awakening exposes the futility of this obsession. Life cannot be forced. It cannot be predicted. And the more you try to control, the more resistance and suffering arise. At first, letting go feels terrifying. The mind screams, "If I don't control this, it will all fall apart." Every habit, every relationship, every plan becomes a test. The spiritually awake slowly learn to discern where their influence ends and where surrender begins. They observe without forcing, act without overbearing, and release without guilt. This doesn't mean passivity. Surrender is not weakness, it is mastery. The awakened act decisively when needed, but without clinging to outcomes. They invest effort without obsession, make choices without anxiety, and let the universe fill in the gaps. What was once fear-driven control transforms into conscious trust. The process is subtle and cumulative. They notice when trying to force results only creates tension, misalignment, and unintended consequences. They begin practicing patience, aligning actions with intuition and trusting flow. They stop micromanaging relationships, projects, or outcomes and allow life to unfold in its own timing. As control is released, a new power emerges, the power of flow. Decisions become clearer, energy is preserved, and synchronicities appear. Life responds to presence rather than force. The spiritually awake realize that surrendering to the natural order amplifies their influence more than any desperate attempt to dominate could. This slow quitting of control also deepens peace. Anxiety diminishes, frustration fades, inner stability grows. They experience the freedom of trusting life, of accepting uncertainty, and of allowing universal intelligence to guide outcomes. The spiritually awake quit chasing the illusion of control, not because they are passive, but because they have discovered a higher form of mastery. True power is not in forcing the world to conform to your will. It is in aligning with life, flowing with it, and becoming an instrument of conscious energy. By letting go, they gain everything: clarity, presence, freedom, and alignment. They no longer wrestle with life. They dance with it, moving with grace, awareness, and purpose. And in this surrender, the spiritually awake find the ultimate freedom, the peace of knowing that the universe, not the ego, is in command. Spiritual awakening is a process of quiet, deliberate quitting. It's not about rebellion or rejection. It's about evolution. The spiritually awake slowly shed what no longer serves them: toxic relationships, the need for external validation, old habits, masks of pretense, and the illusion of control. Each release is a reclaiming of energy, clarity, and inner power. This slow quitting isn't easy. It challenges the ego, alienates familiar connections, and confronts fears long buried. But it is necessary. Every boundary set, every habit released, every mask removed brings the awakened closer to alignment with truth, purpose, and their highest self. They no longer measure themselves by others' approval, nor do they bend to societal expectations. Their life becomes a reflection of inner sovereignty rather than external influence. The spiritually awake learn that freedom comes from letting go, not from clinging. They embrace discomfort, silence, and uncertainty, knowing that true power lies in presence and alignment, not control. They surround themselves with energy that resonates, practices that elevate, and relationships that honor authenticity. Subscribe to join the Guru Clan, a brotherhood of awakened souls mastering truth, clarity, and self-mastery. Comment below. What is one thing you've slowly quit since awakening? Share your story. Your experience could inspire someone still trapped in illusion. By quitting what no longer serves, the spiritually awake rise into a life of peace, purpose, and power. Every release is liberation, every detachment is growth, and every step forward brings them closer to the ultimate truth, that life flows best when lived intentionally, authentically, and aligned with the soul.